So there were two things I wanted to do in the book. First was to sort of like rescue these words of joy and hope and kind of everything in that bucket, because I think we are defining them incorrectly. We take joy and hope to be these like frivolous, silly emotions. They're a luxury you should, reach for when you have time. And the truth is that neurobiologically, they're incredibly powerful. They are literally the pillars of resilience. But I think because we've labeled them as quote unquote good, happy, light emotions, part of us feels like we cannot access them when things are dark, or we should not access them when things are dark.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about reconnecting with joy, hope, and wholeness after trauma. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. MaryCatherine McDonald. Dr. McDonald is known as the Brené Brown of trauma. She is a sought-after speaker, trainer, researcher, and the author of multiple books and peer-reviewed research articles. She has been featured in Psychology Today, HuffPost, Newsweek, the Mel Robbins podcast, and more. You can reach Dr. McDonald's at her website, alchemycoaching.life, and on social media, and I'll include those links in the show notes. Welcome, MaryCatherine. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to see where we go.
I am so excited too. And isn't that fun when you said to
It
see
is
where we go? Because with a conversation, it could go anywhere. And there are
totally.
so many topics that we could cover. I hope that the ones that we cover are the ones that our listeners really need to hear. Now, I
Yes.
just read a beautiful review from Mel Robbins about your latest book, Joy Reset, and I'm really excited to talk about joy. We have some weird things going on with joy, where instead of
Yeah.
being excited about joy and seeking
Mhm.
joy, people are often actually afraid of joy.
Mhm.
It feels scary. And when we do feel joyful, we feel a little guilty, like, oh, I'm not
Mhm.
supposed to do that. Can you help us understand what is going on?
Yes, I think so. There were two things I wanted to do in the book, which I hope we can get to both. The first was to sort of like rescue these words of joy and hope and kind of everything in that bucket, because I think we are defining them incorrectly. We take joy and hope to be these like frivolous, silly emotions. They're a luxury you should, reach for when you have time. And the truth is that neurobiologically, they're incredibly powerful. They are literally the pillars of resilience. But I think because we've labeled them as quote unquote good, happy, light emotions, part of us feels like we cannot access them when things are dark, or we should not access them when things are dark. And so when I was working with clients, many of my clients are dealing with acute, severe trauma. And if we get to a place where I try to mention joy practices, I was finding that their nervous systems were actually rejecting the practice and the concept. And it was like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? And so I went on this, I kind of just jumped down this rabbit hole trying to figure out what are the barriers standing in the way of joy? Because if joy is healing and we're traumatized, why can't we get from point A to point B? That would be so helpful. There's a whole field of positive psychology that's based on this. There's tons of science around it. But I think the blind spot and the thing that many folks missed is that we, one of the most miraculous things about being human is that the human body and system adapts. And so if you have enough stress and overwhelm, your system levels up to that level of stress and overwhelm. And so when you try to introduce joy or hope, which are not silly and flighty, but they do ask you to put your guard down, your nervous system can kind of snap back against that. The hypervigilant nervous system doesn't want to indulge joy because joy would cause it to not be hypervigilant. And if hypervigilance came out of a protective defense, then there's a natural resistance. And that, of course, can be worked with, but we have to first become aware of what those barriers are. So the second thing I wanted to do in the book is identify these barriers, and I have six of them. There are probably 100 more, but for now, we have six sort of barriers to joy. And so I spend the book kind of unpacking each one of them. Hypervigilance is one, and then validating why does this exist and why did it happen in the first place? And then how can you work with it so that you can learn to welcome and joy and get your nervous system used to the good things, just like it had to get used to the bad.
Okay, that is fascinating. I would love to get to as much of this as possible. This is going to be packed with just golden nuggets of awesomeness.
Oh,
So
yay.
let's start with some definitions that are
Mhm.
not fluffy, something that is worth seeking. And I would love if you would just weave in some of the research that says this helps regulate your nervous system. And I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating when we bring in our nervous system. What we're doing here is not only giving information, but we're helping to clarify that when we're talking about these emotions, that sometimes we have a tendency to separate. We have, our emotions, we have our thoughts, we have our physical body, we have our whatever. Everything is totally separate.
Mhm.
Everything is connected, and these emotions affect our body. We're not just
Mhm.
talking touchy-feely. This is our physiology. This is our body that we're talking
Mhm.
about. These states of being affect us on a physiological level.
Yep.
So there is value to hope and to
Yes.
joy that's beyond touchy-feely. And if I have time and space for it, and my life happens to be perfect, and everyone else's life that I'm worried about is also perfect, so that I don't feel
Mhm.
guilty for feeling joy,
Mhm.
there's so much more to it. So, can you help us feel, first of all,
Yes.
not guilty because
Yeah.
it's something we want?
Right. Yeah, and the guilt, I couldn't have known this because with books you write it and then it comes out like 25 years later, right? So like you can't have planned what was going on, but I'm seeing joy, guilt, which is one of the thieves so much more often recently, and it makes sense, right? Because we're living in such a dark time, and so you'll start to feel a spark of joy, or you'll feel like, wow, things are going really well. I have a lot of gratitude. I have a lot of hope for my future. But then you open the news, or someone reminds you, of what's going on in their life, which is the opposite, and you feel like I'm not actually entitled to this feeling. And so I think the book is coming at a good time because I really do think we need it right now. Because going back to the neurobiology, so I always like to tell my students, and they get mad at this term, but I think I love it. It's a dynamic unity, right? All of those things that you mentioned as like things that we think of as separate, our thoughts, our behaviors, our body, our mind. It's a dynamic unity. All of it is informing everything else. And so an easy example of this is when you feel anxious, right? If you have a test coming up, or if you have a presentation you have to give at work, or you have to have a hard conversation with someone in your life, you start to feel nervous and it impacts your body instantly. So you get sweaty palms and your stomach hurts and you feel like a little, pumped up and like jittery and all this stuff. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to have this anxious thought and it's not going to affect my body. And vice versa. If you drink too much coffee but you don't have anything to worry about for the rest of the day, your body will still get jittery as if you did have something to worry about. So like it is really important to understand that these systems all inform each other. The stuff when it comes to joy is so exciting. So for a very long time we have known, well, since the 90s when we started like kind of looking at brains, we have known that fear inhibits many systems in the brain and body. So when you are in a state of high fear, you don't have a lot of access to your rational mind. You also don't have a lot of access to your capacity for imagination or for joy. Those things are kind of missing. And that makes sense if you think about that from like evolution. If you're running away from a tiger, it's not in your biological advantage to be planning your next vacation. You have to just be getting out of the situation, right? And so we've known that for a long time. And a lot of the work on trauma is about how to kind of deal with fear and sort of throttle it back when it gets too high. But what people realized, I think this was like 2015 when the first study of this came out, is that hope also inhibits fear. Yep. So fear inhibits hope, and we know that, and we've experienced that. But hope and everything connected to it, including joy, also then inhibits fear. And here's why. So if you think about your brain as like a circuit board, just like the circuit board in your house, A circuit board has energy, but it doesn't have unlimited energy. And so if something is on that is taking up a ton of energy, that means lots of other things can't be online. And so I live in an old house, and in my house, if the air conditioning unit is on, I can't run the hair dryer or the microwave, or a fuse will blow. Right. And it's the same thing with the brain. So if you're really afraid, you can't access hope because that circuit is offline. The fear center is taking up too much energy. But the reverse is also true. If you are intentionally spending time in hope and joy and practices that are related to that, every second that you're spending in that space is a second that your fear center is by definition offline. Isn't that
Wow,
cool? Yeah.
that is very cool. So I can see that this would be a very positive thing
Mhm.
if we don't want to be in a state of fear. So
Yes.
what does it mean that we're resisting that? Does that
Mhm.
mean that we feel like, as you said, hypervigilance, where, if I let my guard down, something bad is going to happen? Is
Yep.
that what we're thinking? Our brain is like, whoa, don't
Yeah.
don't let your fear down because it's keeping you safe.
Yeah, exactly that. I think if you think about it as like a sniper on watch, if you have your phone out and you're looking at funny TikTok messages or TikTok videos and you want to show it to the person who's the sniper on watch, they're going to push you away. This is not what we're doing now. We have to keep ourselves safe. And what that looks like is 24/7 scanning. And so we don't have time for joy. I have to stay hyper vigilant. Now you can see like the adaptive move in that, right? When you're in that kind of danger, that hypervigilance is life-saving. The problem is when you're not in that kind of situation, but you're stuck in the hypervigilance, then you need to figure out how to access joy. And if your system still thinks you're in danger, then it's going to reject joy. And so the trick is to try to figure out how to reintroduce your nervous system to the hope and joy that you had before the trauma and let yourself, essentially, you're re educating the body that these things are safe, that you are worthy, that you don't have to feel guilty, that you don't have to brace yourself for the other shoe.
That is a life I would prefer to live. One
Yeah, right.
where I don't feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, where I'm
Hmm.
not constantly in that state of fear.
Hmm.
And you are uh, so trauma informed, and you
Hmm.
know that as we experience trauma, it
Hmm.
continues to run in the background. And as you mentioned previously, we have limited energy, and so it diverts from here and from there in order to be able to take care of our safety,
Hmm.
that we are trying to be safe. And it's our brain is trying to help us. When we
Yes.
experience a trauma and it's too much to cope with, our brain says, I got you.
Hmm.
I'm just going to take care of things. Don't worry about it. And
Hmm.
it's wonderful to help us survive.
Yeah.
But it is not wonderful when we're trying
Hmm.
to thrive.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
hope and joy are part of thriving.
Yes.
So if you walk us through these six things that are stealing our joy. I don't want to just survive. I do want to survive, but I
Right.
don't just want to survive. I want to thrive.
Right.
I want to be
Yes.
happy.
Yep. Yep. David Morris, I mean, the way that you said that is so perfect. David Morris, who wrote a book called The Evil Hours, which is about his experience with having PTSD and going through a modality called prolonged exposure therapy. He has this line that I think of like 3 times a day, that trauma is a truth that tells you a lie. Trauma is a glimpse of truth that tells you a lie. And so the glimpse of truth is that like, trauma shatters our belief systems. We believe that everything is going to be okay, and then something traumatic happens and shows us that's not always the case, and we are more vulnerable than we thought. And that's horrifying. It's a truth that we don't want to know, but then once you know it, you can't unknow it. The lie is that you have to then spend the rest of your life in this hypervigilant, traumatized state. And so what this work is about is trying to figure out how do you bring yourself back down from that state and, as you put it, like back into thriving. So the six joy thieves that I talk about are hypervigilance, which we've talked about a lot. Emotional numbing, which is what happens when, so as you just put it, when you're going through something traumatic, your brain kicks into gear. It has this automatic coping system that kicks into gear. One of the tools that it has at the ready is emotional numbing, dissociation, disconnection, right? There's too much to feel, so we're gonna, just kind of check out a little bit. And the problem is we're not very good at selective numbing, and so we are attempt to numb the bad, and we end up numbing everything. So we numb our emotions kind of in general. And so what this looks like is folks who are dealing with things that they cognitively know should make them feel joy, but it doesn't land. So a client will come in and they'll say, like, oh, I got a promotion at work, or I feel like my relationship is going really well, but it's not landing. I don't feel it. And that's a sign that you've numbed out some overwhelm, which you needed to, but now we've got this situation where you've numbed out the good as well. The next two are very closely connected: fear of loss and fear conditioning. And so fear of loss is what happens when you have really good, joyful things going on in your life and you lose them. And you then become so imprinted by that loss that it feels like the only answer is to not ever connect and feel those things again. It's heartbreaking. And then fear conditioning is very similar, but it's when you have, I think sometimes there's this layer of sort of humiliation that comes with trauma, like you should have known it was coming. And so you were living this good life and everything was fine. And then something bad happened and you should have known it was coming. And so then the lie there is that you need to spend the rest of your life sort of fearing joy. So joy will come in, you'll start to feel it, and then you'll say, no, 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 we're not doing this again. Remember what happened last time. It's almost like joy becomes a fear. We become afraid of joy. And then the last two are guilt and shame, which are obviously closely connected. And the guilt is when, like we mentioned earlier, we're living in a very dark time. And if something good happens to you, it can feel very strange to imprint and lean into that good feeling because you know that there are so many people that are suffering. And then guilt, shame is sort of guilt metastasized. So if you think about guilt as being related to a thing, like an event that you did, or maybe a mistake that you made, shame is a belief about yourself. So when guilt goes unchecked for long enough, you start to feel like you're not worthy as a person of joy in general. And so this sometimes happens when people have made a big mistake in their life, or they grew up in an abusive household and they don't believe that they are worthy of joy. So they understand that it's out there and available for other people. But when it comes and knocking on their door, it's like, no, this isn't for us. So those are the six thieves. And then the two steps are basically becoming aware of which ones are active for you. And you can have all of them, you can have one of them. Some people have one of them much more vividly than others. And then figuring out how to give yourself small doses of joy and hope so that you can start to imprint that these things are safe and healing. And as you're doing that, with every day that you're doing it, you're starting to rewire your brain and your nervous system, which will help you start to feel better.
Yay. Okay.
Yay.
As you're talking through the six things and
Yeah.
all of this, it just like, okay, I've seen that, I've experienced that,
Right.
going through different things. And then it just leaves you sort of, oh.
Yeah.
And when you say, okay, now here's what
Yep.
we can do about it.
Yep.
And I am so grateful that you didn't just leave us in that pit of
No.
despair because yuck. And you
Yep.
have mentioned multiple times we live in dark times. There's a lot of
Mm.
hurt, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering. So, how do we get rid of the darkness?
Mm.
Ironically, a part of our instinctive response is to mirror it. Okay,
Yeah.
I should be dark. That is the
Yep.
appropriate response for dark times. And yet, when it's dark, the best way to counter the dark and to change the dark, even for other people, not just ourselves,
Yep.
is to turn on a light.
Yes.
So, thank you. So, for those who are listening, and that guilt, I know it's common, that how can I be happy? How can I be
Yeah.
joyful when there are, children who are starving or this situation is
Mhm.
going on that isn't right?
Mhm.
Is it fair? Is it right? I
Mhm.
want to be good. I want to make a difference. And
Yeah.
so if we can switch a little bit and say, then rather than mirroring the darkness, let's add some light.
Hmm.
And light, we start with ourselves so that we
Hmm.
can light ourselves and then we can help light those around us.
Yeah.
So, first is becoming aware. And even as you're just labeling them, just describing them, it's like, oh, I think it's kind of a little bit of an awareness. I'm sure you go
Right.
deeper. And then small doses.
Yeah.
Can you give us some suggestions, some examples of let's have some
Yes.
small doses of light so that I know that this is one, okay,
Yep.
and two, that it is safe.
Yes. So I want to cognitively address the guilt thing because it is coming up so often. And I didn't write about this much, that much in the book because I didn't know the kind of times we were going to be living in. But it is so important to understand that when we redefine joy in the way that we've been talking about, we are talking about something that is strong and steely and healing, not just for you, but for anyone in your environment. We have an option when it is a moment of darkness, like the one we are currently living in, that we can either, as you put it so beautifully, mirror the dark and amplify it, contribute to the chaos, or we can introduce a little bit of calm and peace and joy into the darkness. And so it's not only okay to feel and lean into joy right now, it's actually a duty and it's a rebellion. And I just think yeah, I think that's so, so, so important.
I just want to cheer. Okay, that
Yay.
clarification, because I think the starting point is it okay?
Yeah,
I,
100%.
do I have permission?
Yep.
Is it appropriate? Because
Right.
we behave differently in different situations. So in darkness, is the appropriate response to
Right.
be dark. And when you switched it and said, and I love the word steely too, it sounded kind of
Right.
edgy here, but
Yes.
it is a duty.
Yep.
It's okay, you see the problem. It is
Hmm.
your duty to become
Yep.
part of the solution.
Yes. 100%. And you're not going to be able to do that every day. One of the things I think that's really important is that it's okay to give up on joy and hope. We tell people all the time, you can't give up hope, you can't give up hope. Yes, you can. Hope and joy don't need you to believe in them for them to exist. It's okay. Sometimes your job is just to hold on and wait, and someone else will hold up the hope or the joy, and you'll be inspired by them, right? Or like you'll see it in something, or you'll be inspired tomorrow when you're not as exhausted. And so I think that that's a really important thing too, because we put all these sort of like moral framings around these emotions, and it's just we're getting in our own way. But so to go back to your question about the practices, one of the easiest practices, and I'm doing this year on Instagram every single day of 2025, which has been a hilarious parade of disasters. This year has been hilariously disastrous, not in any serious way, but like stupid little disasters keep happening. But I've made this commitment to do a tiny little joy every single day on Instagram. And a tiny little joy, this is a practice that came out of the beginning of the pandemic, actually. And was inspired by Virginia Woolf. And basically, the idea is that you take something in your environment or like in the last 24 hours of your life that sparks the tiniest feeling of contentment, happiness, joy, safety, anything. And you bring that to mind and you imprint it, meaning you kind of sit with that experience for 20 seconds. How does it feel in your body? And then you go on with your day. And so that little practice is number one, easy. You can do it anytime in any situation. You can do it at work, on your commute, you can do it at home, you can do it in bed, anytime. Um, and two, it orients you toward the good. As you mentioned before, our nervous systems are wired to keep us safe. And so what that means is that unfortunately, we have an automatic negativity bias. We are more likely to imprint the negative things than we are the good things. Anyone knows this if you've ever had like a review at work and your boss says 20 amazing things about you and gives you one critical piece to work on, all you remember for the next 10 years of your life is the negative thing that he said, right? Not the positive thing. Um, but if we manually imprint the good things, then we start to fill out our worldview and make it more balanced. yes, the dark is here. And joy is not, the purpose of joy is not to counter that and erase it. It's to sit next to it and anchor us. And so if you're having a terrible day, and you got a flat tire and then you took your car in and you found out now you need all four tires and it's tax day and you got to pay your taxes and now you got to pay an extra $1,000 for, like, that's not a good day that you're having. But in that moment you can accept that it's an annoying, frustrating day, and also orient yourself towards, okay, well, what's good? Well, I have this iced coffee in the car with me, and it's the feeling of drinking it is very refreshing and it's giving me energy, right? And that's a tiny little joy. And when we're doing it on Instagram, we're doing it collectively. And this I did not plan for at all. But the fascinating thing is that people are commenting on each other's tiny little joys. And it's creating this like community of kind-heartedness where I know, where we're talking about all the good things that are happening. And that against everything else that's happening on the internet right now feels monumental to me.
Wow, you are creating a community of joy and doing
Yeah.
it through social media.
Yes.
Unfortunately, social media is often the reverse of that. It creates a culture of negativity where the negativity
100%.
builds on the negativity.
Yeah.
And isn't it wonderful that we can use that same tool to create an opposite effect?
Yeah.
And I love that you gave a homework assignment here of 20
Mhm.
seconds.
Yeah.
20 seconds
Yes. 20
seems
seconds.
manageable.
Right.
Able to say, okay, I can sit with this thing for
Mhm.
20 seconds and
Yep.
I can experience feeling something that's positive and
Yep.
sit with it and say,
Yep.
let my body go, oh, that I didn't kill me. That
Yeah.
was okay.
Exactly. Yes.
So we could do that again. And I'm
Yep.
pretty sure I'm going to survive something else positive that's coming
Yes.
your way.
Yes.
Yeah. What a beautiful, marvelous thing. And
Isn't it fun?
yes, a little image came to my mind when you talked
Yeah.
about the darkness and how the joy, we're not trying to cancel out, and
Yeah.
we're definitely not trying to pretend that there aren't hard
Right.
things going on, but that we sit with the light. And this
Hmm.
little image popped into my head of maybe you're camping and it's night and it's dark and you have a little campfire and you're sitting next to the fire and enjoying the light and the warmth that is here, even though our surroundings are dark. And a night sky is actually beautiful. There's beauty
Oh,
even in big situations that are, you know,
yes.
I love it. So I think
And
what
yeah,
you're doing
no.
is fantastic. We do
Oh, thank you.
a little thing where we just around the dinner table, we just share two good things about
Yes.
your day, or two good things about your week, depending on if we, have a bigger group and we haven't seen each other for a little while. And
Yeah.
and it's fun to it creates, as you mentioned, a community where it's doing one
Yes.
thing. It helps us to think about positives. Like it might not have been a fabulous day or a fabulous week, but within that day, there were good moments.
Hmm.
There's always
Hmm.
good moments. And even if we can't
Yes.
think of something good, we have good things that we take
Yeah.
for granted. Like, wow, I have a flushing toilet and I have
Yes.
lights that I can switch on, and there's the sun still in the sky. That they're always there. And then we just don't think about them. And
Yep.
it also creates a community as we share and rejoice in each other's good things. It's like, wow, that was wonderful. Tell me more
Yep.
about this good thing that happened. So
Yep.
beautifully done. Love it.
I
Thank you.
love
20
it.
seconds for homework is plenty.
You can do it. And if you do it every day, you'll notice that you'll start doing it without even meaning to, that's the amazing part. It becomes second nature. And then your worldview is starting to change. We know that trauma changes our worldview. So can joy.
Okay, that another golden nugget. Trauma is a moment that changes the way that we see things and experience things.
Mhm.
The joyful things usually don't do it in that quick, like flip on a light switch thing. It's a little
Yep.
more like a sunrise where things come gradually,
Oh, I love that.
but
Yep.
the light can come, the
Yep.
perspective can change, the joy can become as normal and comfortable as those feelings of fear once were.
Yes. Yay.
Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. Okay, is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Oh my goodness. I'm so in it in the conversation. This has been so wonderful. I think that I just want people to know they're not alone, and that if you're dealing with that and and you feel like you are in a dark time and there can't possibly be joy, I promise you it's there. And we will find it for you if you can't, and inspire you if you can't find the inspiration. Just all you have to do is hold on.
Thank you. That is a very hopeful thing because sometimes it is hard to find those things. So
Mhm.
hold on. And I spoke to someone just today who was struggling with feelings of, I am so miserable. I don't want to live anymore. And
Mm.
gave away all of his furniture and gave away everything.
Oh,
And
no.
I just complimented him. I'm proud of you. Thank you for having the courage to still be here today. And sometimes when we're in a space like that, if we can't go day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, hold on. Please
Mhm.
hold on.
Mhm.
And there are people who can help you until you're ready to be able to walk on your own
Yep.
because you matter.
Yep. And you might not be able to see or feel them right now, but there are people who have been in that same dark abyss and they're cheering you on. Just one breath at a time. Keep going.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for visiting
Mhm.
with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so lovely and warm.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Beth Moore.
Mm.
She said, I am better off healed than I ever was unbroken. Today, I invite our listeners to become better through healing from our traumas and experiencing joy. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.